Hello and welcome back to another episode of Only a Bag, an Italy travel podcast. I'm Nathaniel Mellor.
And I'm Darcy Melton.
And today we are continuing our episode, conversation, talk, discussion, our infomercial. I don't know what this is, on Paestum. It's not an infomercial.
It's definitely not that. I would say discussion.
Discussion?
Sure.
Yeah. On Paestum. And we've talked about what it is and the history. And today we're going to talk about why you should visit. But before we get into that, we just want to say a massive thank you to everyone who has been listening, who has been leaving reviews, who has been following, who has been sharing it. We genuinely deeply appreciate it. It is huge. I feel like we are, I don't know, like it's nice to see us sort of pop up sometimes when I search for things. I'm like, oh, that's us.
It's wild to see us when you look up something about Italy and it's like, oh, there we are.
That is wild. And I know some of it is just, I'm like, I've searched it before, so it's popping up for me. Right. I'm like, I get it. It's fine. It's a little pat on the back, but we really do appreciate it to everyone. Thank you so much. If you'd like to follow or leave a review, you can do so wherever you listen to your podcasts or on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, since I think those are the two biggest ones. If you'd like to read any of our articles, you can do so on onlyabag.com, where you can also send us a message. Likewise, on Instagram, we are at onlyabagpodcast. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns. If you'd like to help out the podcast, you can do so through a direct donation on Ko-fi, ko-fi.com/onlyabag. And you can also use our affiliate links in the description of this episode, any episode, as well as on our website. We do not represent any of the companies that are listed that we link to, but we do receive a small commission from them if you book through the affiliate links, and you have our eternal gratitude. We deeply, deeply appreciate it. So thank you all so much for listening and for contributing and for helping out Only a Bag and helping us grow. We really do genuinely, deeply appreciate it.
Thank you all so much.
And without further ado, or there is some more ado?
There's no more ado.
No more ado. Let's jump on into Paestum, why you should visit.
So let's kind of talk about what you can visit.
I love it.
I did a mashup.
What do you want to visit?
I mashed up Paestum and visit. I still don't know if I'm saying Paestum right. Some people say Paestum. Some people say Paestum.
I think I like Paestum because it's more interesting to say, especially in Italian where everything else does not have the sh sound doesn't really exist at all.
Yeah.
So it feels like it's nice to
do a
say
small
Paestum.
sound.
Paestum. Yeah.
Which is spelled Paestum, right?
Yes.
Okay, I can't. I don't spell very well. So we've kind of compared Paestum to Pompeii and Herculaneum, and I would say that it is the area of Paestum which is visible and that you can visit is far smaller than Pompeii.
Yes.
However, Pompeii is absolutely massive.
And getting bigger every day.
Yes. So a lot of Paestum is, I believe, is under a current city. Part of it, as we'll talk about, is under a tomato canning factory.
And a road.
But there is quite a lot that you can visit. So there's the archaeological park of Paestum, the National Archaeological Museum, the Museum of Hera Agrippa at the mouth of Selle, which is, and the former, I think you can also visit the former Cheerio factory.
Which is like a
tomato canning factory.
Beautiful.
It's listed on the website. And there's also what we're not going to talk about today is the ancient city of Velia, because that is nowhere near Paestum, but it is basically, if you do want to visit there, I believe that with the same ticket you buy to visit Paestum and the museum, you can also visit the ancient city of Velia, which is farther south.
I think too, if you're renting a car, maybe, and if you're genuinely into like some off the beaten path history, that's worth it. But it is not as impressive, for lack of a better word, maybe like visually impressive, I think, as Paestum would be, just in terms of being so close to Salerno. Easy to get down there and then easy to see everything and go back up and be like, that was crazy, rather than Velia, which is a little bit less like, oh, there's like, y'all really got ransacked. There is nothing here.
Yeah.
But it's still, again, interesting from a history point of view, I think.
Yes, exactly, for sure. So let's talk about what you can see inside of the archaeological park itself.
Absolutely.
Right? So there are 3 temples, as we hinted at in the last episode.
It's a pretty strong hint.
Yeah. And there's a little bit of drama around some of them.
Okay.
So there's the first temple, which is the one farthest south. Essentially, it's not directly, up and down north-south, but the orientation of the part of the park that you can visit, which is visible, is just kind of like it's like a rectangle, north to south.
Okay,
You
sure.
know, so the temple farthest south is the temple to Hera. It is also called the Basilica, and it was erroneously named this when the Romans showed up. Well, not erroneously. They may have used it as a basilica, but originally it was the temple to Hera, which was built around 560 BCE, and it is the
Okay.
oldest temple in the park.
And I think too, just for keeping with our sort of timeline tracking, the Romans showed up, I think, around 200 BCE. So it would not have been a basilica until at least, I don't actually know when the emperor was Constantine, right?
I don't
That
remember.
made Christianity the language, the religion of the Roman Empire.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
so definitely not, for sure not 200
Right. So for a
BCE.
very long time, it was the temple to Hera.
Right.
And I point this out because I believe if you go to the Paestum website, they have it titled as Basilica, which is confusing because it is the temple to Hera.
I love that. And you're like, so just super clear.
Definitively, it is the temple to Hera. So yes. So also kind of confusingly, that's at the farthest point south. Next to it is another temple. It is the second temple to Hera.
Okay.
And this one is kind of where the drama, I think,
Okay.
comes in. So this one was built between 444 and 440 BCE. It is the largest temple in the park. And it's also called, and this is what it's called, I believe, on the Paestum website, the Temple to Neptune.
That's what I was curious about as well. Okay.
Here's the thing.
I
It's
love it.
definitely not a temple to Neptune. When people rediscovered this area, it was known, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, Nathaniel, because you know some more of the history. The town was called, what did we say, Poseidonia?
Poseidonia.
Poseidon,
Poseidonia.
Poseidonia. So Poseidon and Neptune are two names for the same god, yeah? And when people rediscovered this area, they were like, oh, the biggest temple has to be to Poseidon, to Neptune. So we're going to call it this big temple, the Temple to Neptune. That's not who it was for at all. Some people believe it was for Hera, and these are, modern day historians.
Yeah.
Is that a word? Historians, archaeologists.
Is that a word? They think it is. I'm kidding.
And they believe that this temple was either dedicated to Hera, Zeus, or Apollo.
Okay.
Unclear at this time.
Back when I said, like, there's nobody left to name Paestum on it, everyone's like, it would have been nice if you left a name on the temple.
Right, exactly. And people, as far as I know, are trying to discover who this temple was dedicated to. And of course, it could have been to two different people. It could have changed hands over time for who it was dedicated to. But historians and archaeologists look at the archaeological details, and some of these temples even still have like paint on them, and those colors might have denoted who it was dedicated to. So I believe the work is ongoing.
Makes sense. It also, to be fair, I only recently started. I mean, if you look at comparing it to Pompeii,
Right.
to Paestum, it really, like, the money has never been there for Paestum, and even now the money really is not there for Paestum. So it is still, I think, not as interesting yet as Pompeii is, especially as we mentioned that Pompeii is still being unearthed, for
Right.
lack of a better word. It's still being undiscovered and rediscovered. So I think if they're only putting money and archaeologists and historians into one area, I think they think that, yeah, the one that gets 4 million visitors a year is more important than the one that gets 400,000 visitors a year.
Right, exactly, unfortunately. And in a minute, we're going to talk about an area a little bit south of this archaeological park, which is still part of it, and it was rediscovered in the 80s, the 1980s.
Well, there you go.
So there's one more temple in the archaeological park, and it is dedicated to Athena, and it was built in 500 BCE. It's on the northernmost sort of bit that you can see. So it's interesting because the whole area that you can visit that exists is kind of flanked by two temples, by the temple to Athena in the north and the temple to Hera in the south, which is interesting.
I always kind of wonder too. So this we talked about this in the last episode. The city was built in 600, or founded in 600 BCE, and sounds like these temples went up in like 500, 450, and this right. It must have been the loudest place to live for like 200 years, just nonstop, because they had to build the city walls and then the town and the roads,
yeah,
constant, and then the yelling and then this and a rope snapped and something cracked. And it just, I'm like, this just sounds like the worst place to like. I hate it when something they put up a house and there's construction noise for 6 months.
Yeah.
This is 60 years. This is like your grandparents dying, talking about like, oh yeah, I remember when I was born that was still making that noise. Insanity.
People would be like, back in my day, we made our timbals out of sticks. It was a whole lot quieter.
Yeah, 100%. I'm honestly, somebody's definitely saying that, even though for sure they definitely didn't. I feel like somebody's like, what is wrong with using other materials?
Yeah.
So I think about that sometimes when I think about, I don't really like a lot of loud noises, and I'm just thinking like, y'all, they did not have anything. There's no reprieve.
And so speaking of which, so right around where the temples are is a neighborhood, an old neighborhood.
Okay.
An ancient neighborhood.
Okay. I see what you're saying now. Like their Paestum neighborhood.
Yes.
Rather than
so the people who would have been bothered by the temple noise.
Got it.
As they're being erected. Yes. So there is a neighborhood that kind of goes along the whole stretch of this area that you can visit, from the temple of Hera almost all the way up to the temple of Athena. And it's really cool because you can not exactly walk around inside the houses, but there are some that, so the walls don't fully exist anymore. It's all like Pompeii. It's like the walls have fallen down, but you can see the bases of them. And in fact, in some of them, you can still see the tiled, mosaic flooring. And it's absolutely wild. You can see the layout of the houses. And in some of them, you can actually walk around inside this house, which is so crazy because you can imagine like what this house would have looked like in 400 BCE.
Exactly.
Insane. So also there are several other bits in this area that you can visit. There is the sort of center of this area would have been the political and economic sort of bit of the center of the city, and then there's also an amphitheater, which is really cool to see, and over near, I believe, the temple to, is it the temple to Athena? There's sort of a large circular worshiping area. So there's a lot to see, and it's really, really cool.
Something I read mentioned that the Romans had built a sort of an, what do they call that in the Foro Italico, like the forum. There we go. Yeah. They built a forum as well. So some of it is obviously not original. It's 400 years newer in I think that's 2,000 years old.
That's in the sort of like economic area, which it would have already been, which makes sense. City planning wise, they put it in the area that was already functioning for politics and economy. So they put the forum there, which would have been in the same area like where the Greeks had their version of that.
That makes sense. It's actually too. I'm looking at Google Maps because I figured as we talk about the sort of layout, it helps that both of us are understanding.
Yeah.
And I realized that also Google Maps calls it Temple of Hera 2.
Yeah.
It's like that number 1 and number 2.
Yeah, exactly.
That is lovely.
And so outside of this area, which is it confined by like a fence?
Here's the thing, right? Because you're talking about across the road, basically.
Yes.
Well, it is confined by a fence, but it's also like, and this goes back to the idea that silt basically covered up Paestum for the longest time. If you look at Google Maps on the satellite view of Paestum, you'll notice there's like a road that sort of runs alongside it, and it cuts the amphitheater in half. It cuts a lot of stuff in half.
Exactly, and the amphitheater is like, if I'm remembering correctly, is almost under the road.
Yes,
and I don't know how amphitheaters were built, but it could have been built down into the ground a little bit, potentially, like for acoustics and such.
Or like if it was anything remotely like a Coliseum, where it was the things that you'd have like, storage underneath.
Exactly. But there's also the sense that there's definitely stuff underneath the road.
That's the thing. It runs straight into the road and goes under and right across the road. And in case you're like, well, why don't they just keep like unearthing, Paestum? Why have they stopped? It's because like right across that road is a bunch of houses, like 8-10 houses, some restaurants, a parking lot, because you need a couple of gift shops, a museum. Well, that is true. Okay, that one actually is maybe a little bit more necessary than the rest of it, but it is a little bit of a bummer that so much of what could be under there remains undiscovered, mainly because it is kind of, no, I mean, part of it is like, I get it, it's private land, it's somebody's farmland, it belongs to somebody, etc. But it is just like I think part of the reasoning is like, well, we've discovered the big parts, right? Nobody put their house on top of a temple. That being said, in 2025, which is last year, they have discovered the floor plan of another temple. So
yeah, there's certainly stuff over there, and it brings me to my next point. So there's if you go across the street, basically, if you go east across the street, you can go to the museum. But then if you cross the street, which is south of the sort of confined archaeological park, there is something that was rediscovered in the 1980s, and it is the sanctuary of Aphrodite Venus. It
Okay.
was built in 500 to 480 BC. And it's not entirely, it hasn't been entirely excavated because this is the Cheerio factory, which was the tomato canning factory, is on top of it. So when you go, you're looking at this wall that looks kind of like run down from the 1950s, right next to this absolutely ancient site dedicated to Aphrodite Venus. And they know a lot about what went on there, and it revolved a lot around women's and young women's lives in that ancient time. And it's absolutely filled with history, but it's underneath the tomato canning factory.
And you cannot touch the tomato canning factory.
Right. And so it's very easy to imagine that whole area, which is now the tomato canning factory, farmland, the museum, restaurants, and what are they called? What do we say? Gift shops.
Gift shops.
All of that must be on top of another part of this ancient city.
And that's the thing, actually, the temples that they just rediscovered were found in 2024, not 2025. But even that is still, like, there is still so much. And it's something I think I didn't mention in the last episode because it was just more of an interesting tidbit than anything. But after the Middle Ages, and then kind of through time, and then it was rediscovered. And when it was, because it was sort of lost, but when it was rediscovered, there were a lot of plans, like, what do we do with this now, right? Like, do we just leave it there? Do we create it like as a point of, tourism, or do we sort of repurpose it? I think it's called spolia or spolia, I think is the word for when you take the sort of architectural things from, basically, like if you take a temple and you take it apart and you transfer it somewhere else, or just use it for other bits somewhere else.
Okay.
They did it a lot with like facades or anything that was like carved marble, and they're like, that's really good carved marble. We're going to build an archway, and then we're going to actually put your facade on our archway. It does. Rome did this a lot.
Yeah.
It's also why sometimes you might see a wall and there's chunks of like columns or like other random bits and bob in the wall. It's just a way to kind of repurpose. So I say that because that's what they wanted to do with these three massive temples. Thank you.
Wow.
It's like Colosseums. That's not the word. They wanted to repurpose them in Naples in front of churches, potentially, not necessarily rebuild them, but to take the columns. Like, the columns are beautiful. So there were all these thoughts of like, how do we do this? And I'm like, what else could be missing that was already done? As I'm sure we'll get to in a minute, but like, how many things
could have been disassembled and moved.
And as you actually, if you go now, it's funny because there are some etchings, as I mentioned in the last episode, from some English explorers. And in the etchings, right, they have these columns, and there are these giant chunks, like square chunks missing from all these columns. I say giant, but it's like, maybe, I don't know, a couple inches by a couple inches, a couple centimeters by a couple
little
centimeters.
Bits that had been looted and used for other things.
Yeah, like somebody's got like, oh, I need like the perfect piece. Oh, we'll go over there. There's some temples. I don't know what they're for, but take a piece from there. Or like if you're building a house, they're like, yeah, just grab something that's already there. So I think for me, it's wild because so much of history is arguably a bit lost because it's been sort of repurposed, which is awesome, because it maybe, hey, don't start another quarry somewhere.
Yeah, for sure.
But at the same time, you're talking about the Temple of Hera, and like there isn't any proof. And I'm like, there could be. It's just somebody might have looted it,
right?
Because it was a nice big sign that says Temple of Hera, and they thought, well, that's lovely. That would go great in my temple.
Yeah.
And
I'm
then
gonna put that in my kitchen.
Yeah, that honestly is kind of how I imagine the ancient Romans to be.
Yeah, for sure.
Down to the letter. So I say that too because it is hard when I think so much of this is uncovered, and as we mentioned, the money really isn't there. They're not like going to pay to kick everybody out because that would be a whole other sticky situation. There is, it is confined though, unfortunately, by houses everywhere. So it's a bit of a bummer that there's not, and even what isn't confined, like there's still some of the park that's unexplored. It's just not really sort of, I don't know, like explored basically.
Yeah, which is a bummer.
Yeah.
But you can see some other bits that have been taken off these temples for preservation inside of the museum, which all of this is included with your ticket, which we'll talk about in a minute, like how much it is and such. But so inside the museum, which was recently renovated and revamped I think last year, a couple years ago, you can see bits of Hera's temple. You can see frescoes, which are absolutely incredible. One of the famous ones is called the Diver, and that was correct me if I'm wrong, that was the lid of a tomb of the Diver, right?
Interestingly, not found in Paestum.
Yeah, where was it found?
It was found south of Paestum by a guy named Mario Napoli, which is a great name. Mark Naples.
And do you know if that's a site, like can you visit that? Was it like a necropolis or something?
I think it was a necropolis, and I think you can visit. I don't know what is there. They definitely moved a lot of it to be at the museum in Paestum. The Tomb of the Diver is in itself fascinating, though. It's something you might have seen pictures of it. You might have seen photos. It is essentially the famous bit, as you mentioned, is a fresco of a young man diving from a rock into the sea. Mm-hmm. And over the years, like people sort of, obviously there's the sort of connotation of diving into the afterlife, into the next world. One historian thought genuinely he was diving into his swimming pool because swimming pools were a thing that people had back then. This was ridiculed because people were like, no. To be fair, by the way, if I may bring up these temples, okay. I didn't put this in anywhere, but like this is getting spicy.
I love it.
In like the 18th century, 19th century, they brought savants. I'm not sure what a savant is. I know like a savant is like a smart person.
Right.
And this wasn't like, there's no information on what a savant is. And I didn't Google it, and I really should have. And I think it's like the government at the time, or I don't know, brought savants to Paestum and be like, what do you think it is? They were like, these aren't temples.
Can I sign up for that job?
Oh my God, right? Please,
Okay,
please, can I do? I can show up somewhere and just guess. They said these aren't temples. No. We think it's a gymnasium. We think maybe some sort of place where they would have exercised. We think that might have been a library. There's all these things of like what they thought it was that were not temples. And I'm just like, that you got paid for that? That was a job? Y'all just showed up and was like, this is definitely the last 2,000 years of you guys calling this a temple has been dead wrong. It's actually this other thing. Anyway, this is neither here nor there. It's just going back to that idea of like, what is wrong with people? No, it goes back to like the idea of people find something.
Right, and just making up history around it.
And they make up history. And I mean, so the swimming pools apparently were a thing. Some people had swimming pools, right? Some wealthy Romans had swimming pools. So they were thinking maybe this is a wealthier person who had a swimming pool. And everyone's like, I don't think so, but maybe.
Because the coast is right there. So it seems more likely it might be the sea.
It's also this historian's argument was also based on the fact that around there's the entire scene was a symposium, and it's 4 panels and then a lid, right?
Okay.
And the base is carved into the limestone of the earth itself.
Oh, neat.
So the 4 panels show different scenes of essentially like cavorting, right? You have this, and no one's really sure if it's supposed to be scenes of this person's life. Hilarious if so, because he's clearly partying the entire time.
Yeah.
You have one person who is playing a game. I didn't realize there's a game called, I think it's called Katabos.
Okay.
Katabos. And it's where you take wine in your glass and you toss it at a target, and whoever hits the target wins. Beautiful game.
Okay.
Beautiful game, right? I love the idea of you're all drunk, you're all standing around, and you're all like, who can, like, I don't know.
And you have an excess of wine that you can just toss at something?
That you can just toss at something, and you put like a glass in the middle of the thing. Who could hit that glass with their wine? Hilarious to me. And then you have 2 other scenes of just basically men just lounging on these chaise lounges. It's mostly like 2 to a lounge, except like I think one has one.
Okay, I can see with the chaise lounge how they might have thought it was near a pool.
Right.
Okay.
And actually, and some people thought it might have been Lucanians, but as I mentioned the last episode, Lucanians love horses. There are no horses to be seen in this fresco. So even though it was not found in Paestum and it was found closer to Lucanian territory, they don't think it was Lucanian because there are no horses. And they're like, if it was Lucanian,
that would be shameful if you're Lucanian.
Exactly. So no one really knows who this person is. The bones look like they belong to somebody who was an older male.
Okay.
But the frescoes are somebody who is a younger male. So either it's the frescoes are not of this person, or they are of this person, but it's a little bit like maybe in their prime.
Like
maybe
the golden years.
Exactly. Maybe really rough life. Maybe no idea. Like just like, I don't know what the bones are in bad condition means when you find it in a tomb from 2,000 years ago. So that means nothing to me. So in either case, but now this image of this diver, I think is famous mainly because it is this idea of, I don't know, like rather than death sort of being this terrifying prospect of something where somebody jumps willingly into it and sort of with this beautiful grace and this great form, just sort of like, yeah, I'm going to that like happily.
Yeah.
Which I don't know. I mean, it's also if you're paying for like, funeral frescoes, you might have had a pretty chill life, all things
You might
considered.
have had a privileged life for sure.
Yeah. So all that being said is I know that had nothing to do with anything.
No, I love the drama, obviously. And you can go see that fresco.
You too can see this
in
fresco.
that museum.
Thank you all so much for letting me sit with that one.
Oh, that was great. So should we just talk about some of the practicalities real quick?
We could, but first, I think the other thing I wanted to talk about, if I may, one last thing that you can see in the museum
Yeah.
is the basement.
Okay.
Which-
Tell me about
tell you
the
about
basement.
the basement.
I don't know about the basement.
Okay. It is called the Beyond the Museum section, and it is essentially their storeroom. Sort of like if the British Museum, you know how they have like 98%
so
of the
the
British
archives.
Museum is, you can't see it because it's in the back and nobody's ever going to see it, but they're not going to give it back to anybody because it's theirs. Right. So it's kind of like that, but imagine you could see back there, right?
Cool.
With the same ticket. You're like, can I at least see that stuff? And then they say yes instead of no. You can you can tell a lot about what I think based on this. But the museum in Paestum lets you. They're like actually up until 2015 or 2016, I think it was only for historians, archaeologists, but then they sort of slowly started allowing normal people, regular people,
Super cool.
down in there. And there's a tour, and they show you all the stuff they've collected. I mean, like literally millions of bits of like whether it's pottery or coins or just things they've found just I don't know out and about. And the first thing that they show you is I'm reading my note here because I don't want to get this wrong because it's just kind of beautifully Italian. It is called quote tomb seized by the financial police,
Amazing.
end quote. And that is the first thing you see on the tour. And it is, in fact, a tomb from the Spinazzo necropolis dating to the first half of the 3rd century BCE. At some point, it was stolen. And I think in the 70s, it was stolen. And then it was later recovered by the Guardia di Finanza, the financial police, in 1976 in Taranto, which is, I was about to say Toronto, which is Canada, in Taranto, which is in sort of eastern Italy on the coast. But I thought it was kind of lovely that they started
That's
with
the title as
yes,
well.
yeah, that's the title. They're like, this was recovered by the financial police. Come
Amazing.
look. So I thought that was kind of a fun thing. But honestly, though, the idea of Beyond the Storerooms is a fascinating idea.
I love that.
Because I think, I mean, I do want to also throw in, if I may, before we get into the pricing and how to get there, is the museum itself is really quite beautiful, especially given the fact we're in southern Italy. And the concept of like a functional website is beyond
And their website is great.
like everybody in this. I love Italy, to be clear. It's just sometimes when you need to find information, nobody thinks to put it on a website. So the website's phenomenal. It's in multiple languages. It is super easy to navigate. It has a beautiful layout of like the map and this and that. It has the photo. Everything's so clear. And then when you're actually at the museum, you're kind of blown away because for a second you're like, this is actually one of the nicest museums I've been to.
It's a beautiful museum.
In terms of just like, the lighting, the air conditioning works, I mean, that's the two big ones, the lighting, the air conditioning. I mean, the way that everything's described. The English is actually well written on the little placards. It has English and Italian. It's not like sort of put through, some sort of translating app in like 1982, but like, modern day translation, or maybe they hired somebody who speaks both languages. So for everything, I mean, I'm not trying to make fun of other museums, but sometimes
the translations are questionable.
Yeah. You're like, I don't know if that makes any sense. So I say that because this one, it just feels like they went above and beyond, and they clearly understand like how to kind of draw, or what tourists want, for lack of a better word. And I think what people want are just like, I would love to know this information in easily digestible bits, and I'd love to go to the museum as long as it isn't like 6 things you put in a room and expected me to sort of, I don't know, just be in the room with them. Like it's not interactive, but it certainly feels like, I don't know. It's like they're trying to limit that veil
barrier?
to the past.
Yeah.
That barrier.
And there's absolutely a sense of respectful cultural preservation.
Yes, 100%. So I apologize. Yes.
No,
let's
thank
talk.
you. I always want to know about basements. That sounds weird. Places, secret places I'm not supposed to go that I want access to. So thank you.
I love that. You're welcome. You're like secret places that they're allowing me to be in.
Yes.
You're not big on breaking the law, to be clear.
I am. No, I'm really not. But I
You
do.
sound so bummed out. Sorry. Breaking the law. It's the
Yeah,
worst.
I'm a real rule follower. But if someone's like, hey, people weren't allowed to see this last year, but now they are, and you're special. Like, that's where I want to be.
That's where they get you.
Yeah,
I love it.
exactly.
Okay.
So you can purchase a ticket to visit. I did it again. To
It's
visit
amazing.
Paestum. And they have different pricing throughout the year, but basically the standard price is $10 to $15 depending on the season.
It's, I think, March to November, it's 15, and then November to March, it's 10. So it's essentially
A
off-season,
discount for off-season.
10, 15 for on-season. And, sorry, yeah.
And you wrote this. It's €2 if you're 25 or under.
It is €2, yes, and they actually do make it clear. It's so passive. It's beautifully Italian. Like 25 is understood to be the like. It's like, you know, under 25 is understood to mean not 25. So I kind of love the idea that they're like
So 24
Yeah.
and under. But then if you're under 18,
Free.
it's free, which
so
is
if
really
you're
cool.
like literally 17 or like kind of on the cusp. If you're like a very young looking 21-year-old.
18 is understood to be 18, as they would say.
So, but I'm thinking if you're traveling with a family,
Yeah.
or people who look super young. I don't know. It's like, you know how like your parents are always like, I know you're 12, but can you pretend to be 6 to get us a cheaper meal?
That's how your parents are.
I'm well aware.
And I love them for it.
So if it's like if that kind of vibe, but no, but the €2 ticket is fantastic.
Yeah.
I think it's not listed that is only for EU citizens, and I only say that because I know for a lot of other museums there is an EU ticket pricing of if you're between 18 and I guess 24, you get a €2 ticket. But on the website for Paestum, that is not explicitly stated that it's only for EU citizens. So I believe it's for anyone, which is again, honestly, one of the more affordable. Like because of that, it becomes a quite affordable thing to do with a family.
Honestly, even 15 isn't the worst
Yeah.
compared to some other archaeological sites. So, you know,
Exactly.
it's still money, but it's not the worst, I feel. And this ticket includes access to the archaeological areas of Paestum and Velia and the National Archaeological Museum. And then it's valid for 3 days, which is what we talked about when we said we're not going to talk about Velia in this episode. But if you are traveling around, if you have a car, this one ticket can get you into all of that. And it's pretty easy to see.
It's also too, I mean, if you happen to be staying around Paestum, or Paestum or South Agropoli, something like anywhere in there are some lovely areas. It's a well-known area for its vineyards. It's actually even the original people. I believe I talked about them in the last episode. What did I say they were called? I want to say Eratonians, but that's
It
definitely.
was there was an A, an O, and an E.
I know, right? Enotrians, the Enotrians. That word actually apparently comes from, like, that word means wine or vineyards.
Oh, cool.
Apparently the area is well known for its vineyards before Paestum was there, but it's still well known for its vineyards.
And we really enjoy Paestum wine.
Yes.
It's very good.
So I say that in case you are doing a wine tour and you want to stay there for a few nights or something like that, around there's some lovely little like hotels with pools and things, and you're right next to the beach. So if you are doing a little wine tour, a little off the beaten path, you can obviously do, like, you know, go to the site one day and the museum the next day kind of thing, or vice versa. If you're like, you know what, let's just spread it out a little bit. It doesn't all need to be one day.
Yeah, exactly. And one thing that we didn't mention, but we talk about a lot often, is that there's not a lot of shade. So
I was actually going to mention that as well.
Especially in the summertime, if you go on a sunny day, just be aware that you're going to be in full sun the entire time. So just something to keep in mind.
Yeah, they lost those ruins once. They're not going to lose them again.
Like no more trees.
They're not letting anything grow near there. Yeah. It is beautiful. It's all like grass and stuff, and it's really nice.
Beautiful.
But it's
and they leave
not,
it to, like, it's not like they mow the grass or anything, so it's very meadowy. It's beautiful, but no tree shade really.
No, it's a couple. Yeah, no,
There's a couple trees, but they don't do a whole lot of shading.
no.
And so in order to get there is a train station for the city of Paestum. And you can arrive by train is the train station called Paestum, and there's another town nearby?
It's called, well, the train station, I believe, is just called Paestum.
Okay.
So if you were like on Train Italia or something like that, you're just going to Paestum. Even though that south is actually the town of Paestum, there's just no train station, I believe, in that area. There's no
The train station is both outside of the town and outside of the archaeological area.
useless for everybody. It's
But-
beautifully placed.
My suggestion, so if you book a ticket to this train station, it's a 1 kilometer walk from the train station to the archaeological site, to the museum, to the ticket office, all of that. But when you book that ticket, you can add on, it's called the Paestum Link, which is essentially a bus that's going to pick you up right outside the train station and take you to the archaeological site of Paestum. And that is just €1 one way. And I do suggest that you book that when you book your train ticket. You can just pop it on. But I'm guessing that because it is a actual train station, you can also purchase that €1 ticket at the station.
I hope so.
I'm guessing.
Yeah, it is. And if not, I mean, It is a half-mile walk. As on a sidewalk, it is not a terrible walk. It's just don't plan on, like, there are taxis, I believe, there. So it was just more of don't plan on there being something more elaborate than taxis and then a random bus
It's
and a
also
sidewalk.
not walking through a city or down a nice main street or anything like that. You're walking by farmland,
Yeah,
which is beautiful,
actually,
but
yeah.
you're kind of walking on what might be a busy street flanked by farmland.
Pretty much.
So there you go.
So keep that in mind as you go. The only other thing I wanted to add, if that was the last of the things, this is very unimportant, but it's my possibly favorite part of Paestum, is the road in Paestum, is like the road through Paestum. It's a silly little thing, but it is beautiful as how I think Pompeii has a great road, and it has these elevated crosswalks so that
Right.
like people could walk across the crosswalk while the rolling wheels would pass kind of between, I think, the crosswalk. And that way, especially if it flooded or if it rained, you could still go out and walk. Paestum does not have that. But what it does have are these really, like, you can see the years of carriage use or
Yeah.
cart use, because there's these deep ruts in the road that go up the entire road. And they're not like, it's not one line. It's kind of like, oh, clearly, like, there are almost these different, like, tracks or something.
Right.
Like, you get caught in one and then caught in the other. And, like, oh, that's the one, everyone turned in the
They're
exact same
definitely like
spot.
desire paths rather than
Yes.
intentionally formed ruts in order to keep the carriage there or something like that.
Exactly. No, and it's really beautiful because I think it's one of those things that just for me was like sort of like, oh yeah, you're in this old city. And it wasn't until you kind of see like that sort of, it's like that wear and tear, and then
Right.
you realize like, oh my, like how much this would have had to have been weared and teared.
Yeah, and how many people were using this road before me?
Yeah, for it to look like this. I think, I don't know, it's just, it was one of those, for me, like, I think for everybody has like those little moments that all of a sudden sort of shift your perspective, your understanding, and all of a sudden you're like, that's what this is about. And I think that one for me, it was like, I mean, it was beautiful. Obviously, it's just because these temples are not small, and I think it's easy to think that they are, if that makes, that's the Colosseum's the same way. You're like, it's big, but how big could it be? And then you get there, like, that's actually huge.
Big.
That's
Yeah.
insane. I didn't realize it was that big. And I think these temples are the same way, and they look so out of place. It's just like, I don't know, they shouldn't be there, and they are there. And the same thing, this road, I mean, but even despite that, it still felt more like, oh, it's almost like a theme park in a certain sense, because it is, I mean, it's beautiful. It's just kind of a little bit curated, not super curated, but it's also not wild. It's not like they just, go crazy and there's graffiti everywhere and like do
You're
whatever you
right.
want. It's very much a still an archaeological park. But I think it wasn't until seeing the ruts that I'm like, wow, this is the road you would have taken to the temple every day. This is what, and it just sort of like all of a sudden kind of hit
I
me.
think for me too, it's wild to see the sort of smallness. Like, I mean, humans are small. The smallness and the practicality, but it right up against these absolutely massive buildings dedicated to otherworldly things.
Exactly.
really
It's
cool.
beautiful. So if you happen to go, I hope you enjoy your time there. It is a little off the beaten path. However, if you are going to, right now I'm actually putting together like a little sort of an example itinerary for Southern Italy, just sort of for those of you who are like, I'd love to go to Southern Italy, I'm just not sure where to go and how long to spend and what it would include and just where to even get started. I was putting together an itinerary because there are so many for Italy and so few for Southern Italy. And one of the places on this itinerary, obviously, is Paestum, because if you are spending any time on the Amalfi Coast or in Salerno instead of the Amalfi Coast specifically, it is easy to get to Paestum, especially as you mentioned with the Paestum link. I was actually like once on a train with people going there. It felt so wild. I was like, "You're going to Paestum, really?" It's like I don't want to come across like I don't know, like a total creep, but I'm just like, you know where that is? That's insane, amazing.
From those places too, from Sorrento and possibly from Naples, there are like private car tours that you can hire for the day to do a day trip to Paestum if you'd like to do that as well.
100%. So it is basically easy to loop into a trip to the Amalfi Coast, to Sorrento, even to Naples. You could take a train down to, probably it'd be easier to take it down to Salerno and switch, though I'm sure you can take it like a regionale all the way from Naples to Paestum and then take the link to the actual archaeological site. But in either case, it's not the end of the world to reach. It's not like way off the beaten path or like, oh, this is impossible to reach. It's actually fairly linked up and linked together without it being sort of a pain. So we hope that this has at least put something else on your map for exploring the south in Italy.
Oh, one note is that having visited Paestum just a couple of times, and we're saying that it's kind of in the middle of nowhere, the area directly around it is very much for tourists. I mean, we've said like the shops and
Oh, for
things.
sure, yeah.
So just as a warning, like for restaurants, there are restaurants and cafes, bars, things like that. And this is not to knock them at all. It's just to say that expect more tourist pricing and tourist dishes compared
Yes.
to, grandma's
Yes.
cooking.
Yes, I think that's a great warning. If you wanted to go into Paestum, the town, you can, like, whether by city bus or, I mean, technically you could walk there. You could also technically walk to the water from Paestum if you wanted to. It's not that far. But if you wanted something a little bit better, there are some more restaurants in Paestum itself, the actual functioning city. But yeah, the restaurants right around there are more touristy. However, if you're kind of not, if you're just like, yeah, but it's still something.
Oh, it's not bad. Yeah, it's just a warning that you might not find like the most authentic dish right outside of Paestum.
Especially how often we talk about like, oh, Southern Italy, the food tends to be more authentic. This might
Exactly.
be like that one spot where it wouldn't be, because again, its market is mainly people who don't live here,
Yes,
if that makes sense.
exactly.
So we hope this was enjoyable, and we hope you learned something.
Yeah, I love Paestum. I think it's beautiful.
It's genuinely worth the visit. I think if you happen to already be, it's one of those ones, again, don't fly to Italy for it.
Right.
But if you already are in Southern Italy, I think it's well worth the trip, especially if you have any interest at all in history or temples or stone masonry or anything like that. I think it's kind of, or wine, honestly, and you should look at some temples with drinking wine. Totally worth it.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's that, yeah, if you're looking for something to do on your trip, whether this summer or next summer or any other time of year, but I think summer is a nice time despite the fact it's hot. We hope that it makes to the list of consideration.
Yeah, absolutely. And we will talk to you next week.
Yes, we will.
Yeah, okay.
All right, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Tanti abbracci.